What's a small, seemingly insignificant decision you've made that ended up having a huge impact on your life? Story 1. Took the wrong train in a new city to a minimum wage job that I didn't want but needed at the time. Asked a random guy for directions when phone GPS still kind of sucked. He happened to be going in the same general direction. We rode a train together and nerded out on films we were into. He was an aspiring filmmaker, and I was just a film nerd without any post-high school education or thought of breaking into the industry. We ended up becoming roommates and collaborators eventually. Sold our first film to IFC like 2 years ago. Story 2. Worked in a kindergarten during my gap years between high school and university. A kid with speech and social issues happened to take a special liking to me, resulting in me aging to work closely with his speech therapist, despite only being the teacher's assistant. This reignited my interest in language and made me apply to be a linguistics major. My high school grades made it a long shot, but it turns out that very year they tested out a new system of accepting 50% of students based on motivational essays to try to combat a high dropout rate in linguistics. I made it in on that. They ditched it the next year cause it didn't work. I now have masters in language psychology and start teaching at the same university this semester. If I had applied literally any other year, my chances would have been like lottery odds. Story 3. Me and 2 other coworkers decided to grab some dinner after our shift. One ended up canceling, so I thought my other coworker would cancel too. We were both hungry, so we decided to still grab dinner together. We'd been coworkers for over a year and have always gotten along. But this dinner truly felt like a first date. It was so enjoyable and we talked so much that we didn't realize the restaurant had been closed and that the workers had been cleaning up around us. Him and I ended up falling in love soon after that. Been together for over 6 happy years and wouldn't change a thing. Story 4. Was at a conference and stepped outside for a smoke. Bumped into a friend of mine who introduced me to the man he was walking with. That man encouraged me to apply for an opening in his office and 6 months later he hired me. It was the job that jump-started my career, changing my trajectory, and all because of a bad habit. Story 5. I took a job in an emergency room doing insurance paperwork. I thought, okay, but what happens before they get to the hospital? That exposure lead to a career as a first responder. I never would have imagined I would be helping people in emergencies, been doing it every day for decades. Story 6. I went to prison for a robbery. I did it. I was a heroin addict. After almost 5 years in, at a work center, I got a write-up which would make me stay in for a few months longer. The warden offered a deal if I would paint a mural at a local high school of their mascot. They'd forgive the write-up. I had always been good at drawing but had never done a mural. I figured out how to scale it up in my head and did it. I got out about 6 months later and made it my career. I'm now married, happy, and fully booked until summer of next year for work, owning my own business. In September, I will have been out for 10 years. I also hid my initials in the high school mascot mural. Story 7. On a night out I went to Burger King and at the last second decided to get chicken nuggets with my burger instead of chips. I ate the burger but didn't feel like the nuggets by this point, so I asked the person opposite me on the bus if he wanted them. He said yes, and we got talking. That was 16 years ago and now we are married with a beautiful daughter. Story 8. I chose to be nice to everyone in high school, even the kids people thought were weird. Fricked my life up pretty bad 10 years ago and recently got a call asking if I wanted to train as a software developer by one of those kids. I was frying chicken in a gas station for scraps. Dude told me he remembered me being smart and into that stuff and knew I could learn fast at it. Thanks for all the stories and responses. It kind of makes me tear up seeing everything you all had to say. Life is hard sometimes, so just be excellent to each other. You never know what kind of impact you can have. Hey, the editor here. What do you think about the video so far? It would be nice if this video entertained more people, and this can only be done if you like and subscribe. See you in our awesome community, and now back to the stories. Story 9. I broke my hand playing soccer in high school. Consequently, all I could do for gym class was walk a loop around the track the entire class period until my cast came off. The girl had a cast on her broken finger, so she walked with me every day, and we talked and hit it off. 20+ years later, we're married with a couple of kids. Story 10. I had just moved to Florida from PA with my brother, and we decided to grab lunch at a restaurant we'd never been to before. Got to chatting with the waitress, explained we were new, etc. She brought over her manager and he offered me a job on the spot. Met a cute bartender and 10 years later, we're married with a 5-year-old. Live in a new big city together. Just jumped on the gravy train of life head first by picking that place to eat at. Story 11. Scratched myself up in the field in ROTC training due to my own stupidity. Debated whether to go to the medical tent since it was super minor. I ultimately did. And the cot next to me was a cadet from another school that was in a unit more in line with my career goals. The cadet got me an interview with the commander, and when I graduated and commissioned, I was assigned there. In the first few months, I met my now wife, who was also new to the unit. Nearly 2 decades of marriage later, we're both retiring and traveling the world together. Story 12. Saw an absolutely gorgeous guy on a dating app. He was absolutely stunning, and so far out of my league. Normally I would never have messaged someone so obviously attractive, but I felt I needed to tell him that I thought he was the most attractive person I'd seen online. We've been together 11 years, married for 7, and I've never been happier. Oh, and he thinks I am the hottest thing on legs, so that's a huge bonus. Story 13. I'm terrible at judo and dislocated someone's shoulder. Felt guilty, so decided to learn first aid and found a course 40 minutes from where I live. Met my wife there, and I often think, what if I didn't slip up whilst training? Story 14. Adopted a dog. I didn't even adopt her. My wife asked if she could adopt a dog and I merely agreed to it. My mental health improved approximately 1000% after getting the dog. The routine of feeding, walking, and playing with the pup just keeps me going, and I never get that empty feeling of being by myself. Story 15. About 22 years ago, I was fresh out of high school and had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I went out rollerblading one evening and I decided to go down this road that looked familiar. I noticed a house and thought, hey, that kind of looks like my buddy from HS's house. So I decided to knock. Sure enough, it was his house. He was having a LAN party that weekend and invited me to come over, so I did. Ended up meeting this obnoxious kid who wouldn't leave me alone. Kid ends up becoming my best friend and shaping the direction of my life. He eventually convinces me to play World of Warcraft when it came out. Roughly 3 years later, I met my now wife in WoW. All because I decided to go up and knock on a door.